On Energy Timelines, we bring intelligent conversations and interesting personalities discussing critical issues that shape the industry, even the economy of Nigeria. Join us every weekday on ENERGYDAY TV. Hello and welcome to Energy Timelines. On the program, we update you on the happenings in the oil and gas sector, the extractive sector, as well as the power sector. My name is Monique Ibe. On the program today, we will be discussing with a great man who has 2 decades of professional experience in the power industry. He started his career at the General Electric, where he held different positions between 2000 to 2013. He served as a gas turbines technical advisor and rose to the position of a sales director for GE Energy, covering the Middle East and African regions. Currently, he is the managing director of EKO Electricity Distribution Company, EKEDC. He is engineer ADEOYE FADEYIBI. Sir, how far has EKO Discos gone with its vision of being the leading customer-centric utility in Africa?
I think for us, as you rightly said, our mission and vision, as far as being the leading customer-centric being the word, everything since privatization and also since I took over the helm of affairs of the organization revolves around the theory of customer first. Problems will always come and go, but I think fairness is when you do everything around being customer-centric, it allows a level of agitation to go away, where there's a shared benefit and shared reward system, so that way people can also share in your challenges. People are happy to do that when they understand that you're customer-centric. I think the way we've been able to do that in EKO Disco was, one, to boost the number of channels with which we can relate to customers, to open up a lot of customer care platforms, to strengthen our customer care network in terms of responding to customers. Still a lot of improvements to be made, but I think that we've come a long way. While we get a lot more accolades in terms of our response time and our ability to even have a platform to tell customers what is happening, I think more importantly, we also get to then use that to get both positive and negative feedback, which is fine. Feedback is always good. That's part of being customer-centric. And be open to let them understand challenges that you face, as opposed to just telling them something that is not. So that is, I think for us, that is where I see us, that is how I see the direction of this going, in terms of being a leading customer-centric business.
Okay, so in your own opinion, what differentiates EKO Disco from others?
Okay, so I think apart from the metrics that are open out there, so I think for people to understand, there is a way we're all measured professionally as discos. So whether it's the obligations at the time of privatization and taking over these assets, and over a period, how are we measured? Whether it's ATC and C losses, which you always hear, in terms of the technical, commercial, collection losses, which revolve a lot around, of course, as you know, the efficiency of the system, the performance of the assets, the ability to supply, and then get the appropriate revenues back for it. So you would hear things like billing efficiencies and collection efficiencies. I can go into it in detail, but I think what is important is that to say what differentiates us will be a lot around, one, safety first. The safety of the network in terms of both to the employees, both to itself, and then to the public. Things like that are measured. You do know we have a regulator. The regulator sits and takes a lot of these indices. How do you reduce estimated billing? How can you get billing more accurate? So a lot of different indices that compare. Now, whilst we compare, and yes, we can by all rights say we're a leading disco, it's important to also compare to global standards. I think I would rather spend more time focusing on what are people doing in markets that are doing well, markets that are similar to us. You don't just go and run and start comparing to America. Or I think to be reasonable and relevant, you look at markets like in India. What have they done to clean up the network? What have they done to supply power more? What have they done to reduce energy theft? What have they done in terms of working with utilities, government, law enforcement, I mean, so those are the things we've taken, and I know the regulator too has done same, and we're starting to roll out. But I think first and foremost is to increase the supply hours, supply quality. I think those are the things on top of the mind for us. So if you say how do we compare physically, we'll say apart from that, yes, we have a smaller network, we have a tighter network. We do range from Agbara, going through Amuwo, Festa, coming to Costain. We go in from there into Central, and then we go out, as you know, all the way to Ibeju. So, and covering the whole of the island, Ikoyi, Lekki market. So, it's a good network. It's a good closed network. We have some issues in some areas, but I think that compared to some other discos, you have that cover 4-5 states. There's a larger expanse and maybe a little less ability to focus. So we're able to focus on our network quite a bit.
So what measures has your company put in place to reduce service downtime in your company?
There are a few things that will cause service downtime. I would say things in our control and things not in our control. So as a distribution company, I always try to have people understand we distribute first and foremost the power that we get from the grid. And then the power that we get from the grid is not even just dumped into one location. We do get it allocated. There is coordination between ourselves and the system operator, TCN, MO, to make sure that, look, the power, we try as best as possible, best efforts on all sides, to make sure that the power goes in a way that it's distributed appropriately. Now, sometimes there is issues in terms of coordination, where maybe that's when you start seeing messages like, we're not getting the load adequate, and because of that, we have to drop load. And it goes opposite sometimes, but most times that is one way. But notwithstanding, it's good to take, one of the things we do here is not to pass blame, or I don't believe personally in passing blame. There's a challenge. Now, there are areas where you look at a feeder, there's an 18-20 hour feeder, and it's a public feeder. But along the line of that feeder, one customer is getting 20 hours, one customer is getting 10. So what we've done in our case that has caused some improvement, like I always say, there is room for more improvement. The areas where we've seen those improvements is that we've basically walked the system, identified the things that create faults on those lines, because we're all on 20-hour feeder, but I'm not getting the supply. Let's identify it. We have captured that as best as possible. We've taken a lot of that information. The recent CBN intervention, along with the Office of the Vice President, along with our regulator, and the whole market, we all sat down, as you would know recently, and looked at what is the Capex required in terms of things that you need. So the discos are going ahead to take on a loan on their books with the contractors in place to go ahead and go through this service-based tariff system. I like the idea of service-based. Service-based tariff or service-reflective tariff implies that people are going to take responsibility on all sides. We're going to ensure that I will repair everything, I will fix everything, I will replace, I will get you a clean system, and that way we can all maintain this, service level and hours that we're all trying to achieve. In some areas we're already doing it. We're almost at the completion of this process, and hopefully I see that probably by end of the year, early next year, some of the projects ongoing, some of the projects are going to kick off in the next month or two. I know you saw we posted in the dailies our expression of interest for a number of the tenders. So that process should be completed in the next 2 weeks or so. And hopefully we're able to move forward. But we're committed definitely to going ahead to improve this supply.
So during COVID-19, we all know that companies, businesses was affected. How did your company cope with the COVID-19? Did it affect the workflow in your company?
So first and foremost, we're essential services. However, whilst most companies have a business continuity plan, I'm not sure there will be too many people that have gone through the pandemic as such in this country. I'm not sure a lot of people were ready for it. Thank God, that it didn't impact us early days like it did most countries. However, I think when the reality hit, what happened was we were able to sit and quickly form what we would call a COVID task force. And immediately we started to look at our reality based on what was already happening. So with the luck that we had, was that it was already happening in some parts of the world already. In Asia, it was hitting the UK, it was hitting Europe, hitting the US. So watching the extent that it could go, and while still not getting that yet, it was, especially I'll speak for our network, EKO Disco. You had a government, Lagos State, that was taking it extremely seriously. So every day you turn on your TV, the governor was there, the commissioner for health was there. That gave you some idea of how serious the thing should be taken, and it's being taken by your state. Then you go into your own disco, and we started to do exactly the same, mirroring almost that. We had our COVID task force set up, our platform set up, reviewing our business continuity plan. We're already responding to how we emptied out half of the building. How do we take care, being essential services, how do we take care of making sure that the right IDs were there, informing the government? How do we move around? How do we reduce, you still have to resolve issues at people's houses. You cannot, somebody does not have supply continuously, you still have to get staff there. Now, keeping in mind the safety of our staff is number one. So going somewhere too, they're not immune to COVID. So we had to put in measures, educate our own team, give them some comfort to know that we're always going to make sure they're safe, which was number one in terms of being able to survive the COVID period. We're going to have to change rotations. It couldn't be every day you just come in the same space. We had to do things like increase number of cars, drop the cars of people that were not working in the office, office people, drop pickups in the field. The number of people that can sit in a pickup are reduced. So everything was the whole landscape was changing. How do you get material supply? We need to restock our stores in anticipation, because remember, even the art of trading, everything was being affected. It did impact us, but I think we probably did a lot better than a number of people. And it was interesting. Whilst we saw in the first few months a drop in energy usage of the big hotels or the big industries, and we thought that was going to be the trend. But when people got into their homes, people needed to trade. So we saw a lot of Internet of Things. People were using a lot of, more of the ACs at home, more of home appliances. People were getting comfortable to set up in the house and use their appliances. So the energy demand went up also, and we had to respond to that. So I think overall, I'll give us a pass in terms of how we responded to the COVID times.
Still talking about the COVID-19 pandemic, did it affect your company negatively or positively? Which part of it can you tell us that you're proud about?
I would say absolutely negatively. I would say, I would say both. There's the positives that we were able to. It showed the strength of our team in terms of our staff. It showed it tested how would we, what's the level of passion that we have, and are we really going to adhere to the vision? I was quite proud of a number of our team members, a number of my colleagues, in terms of the ability to see themselves almost like doctors and nurses, and in terms of medical frontline, and still go out and do a lot of their jobs well. So that gives some comfort. That would be a positive in terms of knowing that in the event that something really big happens, we're going to be able to respond. So that was a positive. Negative in terms of the business. Just like everybody else, there was a big impact. Collections really dipped. Our ability to respond in terms of, in some cases, physical interaction wasn't going to happen, especially not even any kind of aggressive or push. So we saw energy drop, we saw collections dip, we saw non-response. In the interest of also the pandemic, the idea of disconnections or things like that was not even going to be the case. So we saw almost a 40% to 50% drop in terms of collection efficiency in some cases. In terms of also being able to have technical response, that was a big negative for us. So overall, those particular months, what we did then was about probably 6 months almost of very tough on the business, absolutely negative. What we did was to compute a lot of that impact and provide that to the regulator, and that is being reviewed and would also probably be accounted for in future reviews that are done.
So, in what way has EKO Discos given back to the society?
I think in over 2 decades of doing, or at least being in some power-related sector, for me, I think once you look at, I've seen big-time people, I've seen money people that have quite a bit. But I see one thing I always remember all the time are people that apply human decency, number one. So I find myself a fan of people that do things that are wow. Wow as in just to humanity, what they do in terms of their understanding and interactions with people and how they see their own, how do they respond in times when there's a need for a response. I remember there were Zoom meetings, they were with the board. And I was quite impressed that even in the time that there was a strain on businesses, the conversation that, on that call, I remember, had a lot to do with what are we going to do. I mean, we're a power utility company, and we're talking about what are we going to do in terms of palliatives. And this is early days. This is not even when people were all rushing to go and do palliatives for the sake of it. And I was quite quiet. I mean, from the chairman to directors, everybody were talking about, okay, we heard, there's this agege, where they are dumping, putting the food there. What can we do? How can we do our own? And then they were talking medical. Most people don't know or might know. At the time when we were just hearing about, what do you call this, ventilators and all this thing they needed, there was approval. We already ordered. We went, dropped it at, the island maternity, a couple of different locations. I think last shoot was one of them in Ikeja. And it felt good to understand that even though as businessmen, they weren't doing it because somebody was compelling them, but they were going to do it because it was the right thing to do at this moment. They were talking about oxygen, talking about different, it felt like they almost wanted to be centers by themselves to treat people so that we don't lose people. And I think that panned out quite well. In my opinion, the ability to deliver a lot of those palliatives was good. I was personally there. I was directed by my directors, of course, board. And I think for me, I think that was a good thing. And management was quite involved. They liked it. They also joined hands in delivering a lot in this palliative. So I think it was a good thing for EKO Disco.
And how would you rate your performance in the ongoing national mass metering program?
Initially, we came off to a rough start. So a number of different reasons. I think we were a bit late in, as you know, the national mass metering program. It was going to be an accountable process. The system was set up to ensure that even from the tendering, everything was put properly, and you had to meet all the conditions precedent. At the time of completion, we started maybe a bit late, but that was not, our phase 1 was about 80,000 meters. Phase 0, we call it, which is ending July. So for us, we met. So the good news is that we've accounted for all of the meters. Now on the installation side, we've moved probably about 50 to 60%. Completion. The regulator has, of course, mandated that by July 31st, no story. Finish your phase 1 as far as installations. Yes, we know you have them now, but complete your installations. So a number of the meter, to be fair, a lot of the meter providers had different challenges. Everything from, and partly might have been because of all this backlog from all this COVID too. I know they were working closely with governments. Issues that they had, different issues. You would have to hear from them directly. But I think installers, getting installers onboarded, trained, all the discos are using a pool of installers. You still require some training to get, and then some confidence from practice and from experience to make sure that the meters are installed properly. And then also to get the general public, in our case, something we noticed also was that as we are installing these meters, where we've done 40, 50,000. So you see the meter installation going up. We are seeing the revenues from people that are metering going down. That could be a problem. My concern now is we're now going back to do a lot of audits, because if those meters are turned to, if the rush is that those meters will turn to automatic theft device, then it's going to be a problem. Because what we're seeing is that that small portion that we're reducing, that population that we're reducing of people that are on estimated bills, they are getting smaller and smaller. That should get less, that their bills should get more and more accurate because people are on PPM. What we're seeing is that the whole of the PPM population. So in our case in EKO, for example, prior to, at the lower tariff, the PPM population was probably 2 billion monthly. Now you look at that, at an increased tariff, you are less than the 2 billion, which means that there's a major concern that we need to work because, but again, the idea is to complete not just the phase 0, the phase 1 is to complete our overall metering gap, ensure that everybody is metered on the network. My worry is that after you meter everybody, if there is still unaccounted energy, then we need to do a lot of monitoring, which we are putting in place with this part of our projects, to ensure that we can catch these gaps before they come. We distribute, like I said, on behalf of the whole market. So most people also have, a lot of people are clear about that now. When we talk about numbers, revenues of the disco, a lot of it goes, it's a market revenue. So it actually doesn't even come to us. It goes into an account that is managed, looked at the CBN level. Everything is looked at. There's first line charges. There's a way the money works. So we see it, but you can't touch it. Everything moves. When it moves, you look at the performance. When I say look at the performance, the energy that comes into your network at one point, all our feeders are metered. So we know the energy that's coming to the network. Then as you move that energy, yes, you will have some technical losses that are expected. Now just picture moving through substations, moving to your individual transformers, whether public or private, moving through the line to your houses. I'm trying to put it simply. Now picture in that sense, the first accounted energy for the market is the feeder and it's metered. We all know what we gave you. What we gave you, that's the money that you owe the market. We now start to distribute with some allowable technical losses that's expected. Now, if you remove those two, that's where the problem starts to happen. That's why they say things like, when we say accounted energy, yes, if the person is indeed with the meter, if that person is, as long as energy coming in, they are vending appropriately, nothing is happening in terms of any kind of energy theft, whether there's a bypass, free riding, there's different things that happen. You're also being a joint, at least watching people on your area or your street to make sure that nobody is hanging wires. There are many things that get done. At night, we see issues where there's a compound that there's massive welding. Their whole business is open from 11 p.m. till 5 a.m. We've had to go and do, investigative things where we record. The compound is very busy. Now, that is energy unaccounted on your street, as long as you look away. And that is major energy. What happens there is that energy, we meter DTs, distribution transformers. So again, another point where we know the energy that's entered an area. So if an energy enters this area that we know, if all of you are metered, all of you are vending, and we can't account for half of the energy, where did it go? So that's why we need to put in, it takes a lot of human effort for people to go around, check for issues. We see market areas sometimes. We see busy areas where during the day you can see the wires just hanging. Come back there at 6, 7 p.m., they are all down. So it's a lot of systemic issues need to be addressed, whilst we also need to do our part in increasing, unfortunately, and that does increase the cost of supplying this electricity, if you think about it. When you have to do so much policing, both physical policing, technical policing, putting more and more monitoring devices, it's almost like a lot of the work has to do with increasing the policing effort. Just like soldiers have to move around because there's more security required. Whenever we need excessive, when you see them moving around a lot, you get a sense that things are not happening the way they should. So that's where we are in terms of what we're doing there.
Do you have any Capex projects the company is pursuing right now?
Yes, we have a lot. So I was talking about the expression of interest that went out, which would account. So for us, there's a big investment drive. I believe for EKO DISCO alone, we're looking at for focused Capex projects over the next 3 years. We're looking at probably in excess of about 70, 80 billion to spend. Those EOIs, that the first round of EOIs that came out was about, I think, 14 to 15 billion. It covered about 100 and, I'll probably say about 186 just feeder rehabilitation projects, both on 11 kV and 33 kV. It covered a number of key projects that we also had, a number of feeders that needed to be reintroduced, a number of dedicated ones, a number of things that we needed in terms of panels, RMUs, transformers, so assets that we needed. All those went out into the first phase. I believe it was about 38 or 30, about 38 lots. Those are going for immediate implementation starting from this month. Of course, we also have other Capex lined up for next year and the year after, driven at and putting in, the key word there is putting monitoring in place, both jointly between ourselves and monitoring teams from the DISCO regulator side, and also from CBN and the Office of the Vice President. The idea is to have a clear, transparent process and ensure that we also monitor the outcome of all these things that we're doing. So yes, we have a lot of Capex projects going on.
We have been talking to Engineer ADEOYE FADEYIBI. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Well, join us next week on Energy Timelines on the station ENERGYDAY TV. You can as well follow our social media platforms showing on the screen. My name is Monique Agbe. Thank you for joining us.